Now, actually, I've been asked to give a talk on dana and how dana can lead to meditation. Is the voice clear enough? Is there any distortion or any kind of thing? No? Right. Now, actually, there are many things we can talk about dana, and I think a lot of you have come to the temple so often that you know quite a lot about dana. But I'd just like to quote you one or two things that the chief high priest always mentioned. He said that dana is not charity. A lot of people seem to think that dana means charity. The word charity means the rich giving to the poor. Those who have giving to those who do not have. That's the meaning of the word charity. But in Buddhism, dana is not charity. Dana is the practice of giving. Giving in this case is not giving of those who are fortunate, giving to those who are not fortunate. It is just the practice of giving. It is just like, for example, we all are English educated, and we know that those Christians, they practice, for example, Christmas. Christmas, they give to each other. Parents give to their children, children give to their parents, brothers give to sisters, sisters give to brothers and uncles, and so on and so forth. Each person gives to one another, to the amount that they can afford. So they are actually practicing dana. So in Buddhism, the practice of dana is the practice of giving. What happens is, usually when we practice dana, we only think in terms of, the lay people giving to the monks. Alright? Now the reason for doing that is because the monks are without any form of support. I mean, they don't have money, they don't go and work to earn any income. Their work is actually to spread the Dhamma to us or to practice the Dhamma. Therefore, the lay people support them by giving them food, clothing, shelter, and so on and so forth. And in Buddhism, we learn that, the practice of dana is very beneficial when you give it to somebody who is very worthy. Worthy means a person who has got a lot of virtues. Now, I understand that you can join a lot of societies, like Rotary Club or JCs or whatever, and they also practice, not actually dana, but they practice charity, That means they give to the blind, the old folks, and so on and so forth. Now that is actually only the practicing of charity. That means they are giving to those who are in need, giving to the needy, those who are unfortunate and those who need. In Buddhism, we go beyond the practice of just giving to those who need, but we practice, as I mentioned earlier, giving to those who are worthy of giving. Right? People who are virtuous. For example, if you give to your parents, they are people who are worthy of receiving from you because they take care of you, they make a lot of sacrifices for you. So when you give to them, they are giving to somebody who are worthy. Alright? So much for some of the points that Chief High Priest used to say. Now, one or two things again I'd like to mention which I've observed about dana is this. When we talk about dana, people always seem to think that, if I don't have money, if I'm not rich, that means I cannot practice dana. That means I cannot give. Because I am not rich, I just earn enough money to support myself. Or I'm not even supporting myself, I am depending on money from my parents. So how can I give? That's what a lot of people think. Well, the practice of giving, you do not need to have money to give. Because we seem to think that dana means only the practice of giving of things. like food, clothing and so forth. But when you practice dana, you can give other things. You can give your time to somebody. Alright? Say for example, you've got a friend, and this friend needs another friend to go somewhere, important, but she's afraid to go there alone, So you accompany her and you go with her. So you are also giving. You're giving your time. You're giving your companionship. You're giving courage to her. Otherwise she would have fear. And if she's got to go somewhere in the dark, and you accompany her, then you're giving her safety as well. Because in the dark she might get robbed or somebody might mark her or something, So you are giving a lot of things without money. So therefore you can see now that the practice of giving can be done in many ways. Right? And it not necessarily needs money. So I think by now you can start thinking of so many ways in which you can give. Now I would like to lead how the practice of dana can lead on to meditation. Right? Now, when a person practices dana, the part of dana that you look for to help you in meditation, you have to look for a few things. The very important things when you practice dana to help you to lead you on to meditation is this. When you practice dana, it is very important that you understand what you are doing. That means to say, when you give away, say you give away food, alright, to somebody, can be to your brother, your sister, to a monk, to your parents, whatever, you give some food, or you share some of your food with somebody. When you give away food, you are not only giving away what you call something for somebody to eat, because food gives life. So when you give food away, you are actually giving life away. If a person does not eat, a person can die without eating. Of course, in Malaysia, we don't see people dying without eating. In the poorer countries like Ethiopia, India, and some of the countries that are, very poor, where people who are very poor, there are people who actually die without eating. They die because of starvation. So therefore, when you give food, you are giving life. When you give food, you are giving energy. Without food, if you try not to eat, say, your breakfast, you don't eat lunch, by the time it comes to dinner time, you find you are feeling quite weak. Isn't it? So when you give food away to somebody, you are giving energy as well. A person without food can become ugly. Right? Yeah? Have you seen those pictures of children who don't eat? They're so thin, their skin crumpled up. Right? They look very ugly. So when you give food, you're also giving beauty away. So when you give food, you give so many things. So when you practice dana, you must learn to appreciate. When you give something, what is it that you actually give? Now, this is the first step to lead you to meditation. The second step, when you practice dana, is that you must do it willingly. Right? You do it willingly. It's not that somebody forced you to do it, It's not somebody pull you and bend your arm and all that for you to do it. That means you do it willingly. Not only do you do it willingly, the third factor is important is that you do it happily as well. Right? When you give something, you give it happily. That means you don't grudge it, or you don't give out of anger. Sometimes you have those people who come to your house, and they force you to give, They say there's a temple we are building here, you have to give, and they will not go until you give some money. So what we usually do is, in order to get rid of this person, we just give $1, and we are quite angry about this person asking and pestering us. We are very irritated about it. Alright, now that is called giving with anger. Alright, you're irritated, that means you have anger. I mean, I don't blame, people who do that. Sometimes it can be very irritating. Now, of course, would be good if you can give with happiness. Right, that when you give food, or when you give something, you give it happily. You know what you're giving, you're willing to do it, and you give it happily. Alright? Now, when you look at dana, sometimes we find that we plan to give something. Say somebody's birthday, alright? So we plan that event, say this my son's birthday, or my friend's birthday, my husband's birthday, my wife's birthday, or, you plan an event to give, alright? So you want to prepare the cake, prepare the food, you prepare the drinks, so you want to give something. So, in the time when you're planning this giving, alright, you're preparing the food and all that, it's called planning the giving. When you're planning this giving, you can either be happy, you can be angry, or you can be quite neutral. But if it is somebody that you love, somebody that you care for, alright, so therefore you plan it with happiness, isn't it? When you're preparing the food and the drinks and so forth, you're very happy. So while you're planning to give, during the time that you're planning, you're happy. So when it comes a time to give the cake to the person, to cut, to blow the candle and so forth, you also do it happily, So that is the act of giving. The time when you actually give what you wanted to give. That's called the act of giving. And then the whole party is over. When it's over, then you think about what you have done. When you think about your giving, you also feel happy. Right? So therefore, if you can follow it in that way, when you think of giving, you're happy. The act of giving, you're also happy. After giving, you think about it, you're also happy. So in all the 3 times, you have perfected your giving. Your giving is perfect. The way you give it is perfect. You have perfected the way of giving. Because when you plan to give, you're happy. At the act of giving, you're happy. After that, you are also happy. And the person who receives it will also be very happy. Now, this then will lead on to meditation. The meditation we are talking about that is linked with dana is called the recollection or the remembering of your giving. When you remember your giving and you think a lot about it, it can lead to what we call meditation. It's beautiful, isn't it? You practice something, and based on what you practice, it can help you to meditate. That means it can help you to calm your mind. It can help you to be very peaceful. It can help you to be very happy. Alright? And if you develop your meditation well, it can even cure your sickness. Of course, you start developing your meditation when you are healthy. So that when you are sick, you go into your meditation. And when you go into your meditation when you are sick, you will cure your sickness. Beautiful. Meditation is something that is very beautiful. So now, let us see how can this meditation on giving be practiced? So far, are you following me? I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, because if it is simple, then it's easy, then everybody can understand, right? And the steps of meditation, I'll try to make it as easy as possible. If it's easy, then everybody can practice it. Actually, life is quite easy, but sometimes we complicate things. Right. So now, meditation on giving is very easy. What you do is, after you have practiced the giving, so the important part here is you have to practice the giving. And you remember that we talk about happiness in giving. Now when you have got all that, then you remember it. You can choose a time or a place to remember it. Of course, you can meditate anywhere, you can meditate anytime. It would be helpful, of course, if you can find, a place that is quiet. Because it is more helpful. But if you cannot find a place that is quiet, then you meditate all the same. Not necessarily that you have to find a place that is quiet. That's why a lot of people say, I cannot meditate because I don't find a place that is quiet. If you want to meditate, even if you cannot find a place that is quiet, you meditate. Because you can meditate anywhere. It would be good if you can find a place that is quiet. But if you cannot find, just go ahead and do it anyway. I have meditated when I was in a party, right? When people are talking and shouting and all that, but nobody is talking to me at that time, so I just spend a few minutes and meditate. Right? You can meditate in your house, you can meditate in your bedroom, whatever. So if you cannot find a place that is quiet, you can still go ahead and meditate. You can meditate anytime. It can be you're having a lunch break or something, you can do your meditation there. Because what you're doing is you're just remembering. You just remember the good deeds that you do, the dana that you did. You just remember it, and you're remembering with happiness. Is it difficult to remember something with happiness? It's not difficult, isn't it? I'm sure we all can remember those times when we're happy, alright? We've gone to some place, we are so happy in that place. Maybe we went swimming somewhere. We went for a picnic somewhere, we are so happy. And when you feel like it, you think about it, you're happy. And sometimes when you listen to a song, maybe the radio is playing a song. Maybe you're in a restaurant eating, in a coffee shop eating, and this owner of the coffee shop turned on the radio, and the radio happened to be singing your favorite song, is it? Maybe at that time when you were listening to this song, you were with your girlfriend, you were courting her, or you were courting your husband at that time, So you're so happy at that time when you're listening to that song, So today when you're in the coffee shop, you hear the same song. So this song brings to you memories, happy memories. So at that time you're quite happy, because the song this song that you listen to prompted something in your mind, so you remember good things. The same thing here is when you feel like meditating on your dana, what you need to do is you just remember it, call it to your mind and think about it. Think about the happiness that you feel when you're planning to give, when you are giving, and after giving that you used to think about it. Feel happy about it. Recall that happiness. So what you can do, help you to meditate well is, when we think of a certain event, we not only think in the form of thoughts, but we can also see it in the mind, isn't it? We can see. See, I say think of your house. What happens is you actually see your house in your mind. The picture of your house is there. Some of you whose imagination is even better, you might even hear the noise that's happening in your house. Right? You might even be able to smell the smell of your own bedroom. You might even be able to feel the touch of your bed. Right? If I ask you to think of some food, like laksa for example, you might even begin to feel the taste of the laksa. Correct or not? So, the more of your senses that you can bring in, the easier it is to remember. The stronger will be the impression on your mind. So when you meditate, you can visualize. Visualize means to see in your mind all those actions that you did. So this is how you start off. You see all those actions that you did in your mind and you're happy about it. You keep thinking about it and you're more happy. When you continue in this way, the next time that you meditate again, what will happen is sometimes the pictures may disappear, but the happiness remains. It is this happiness part that is the most important part. You just recollect the happiness. You just think about the event, the happiness comes. Alright? And when you think about it again, you feel happy. You think about it, you feel happy. You think about it, you feel happy. Not only do you feel happy, you can actually feel in your body, you can actually feel something like electric current going through your body. And sort of a thrill goes through your body. Because when your mind is happy, your body also is happy. So your body can feel the thrill as well. Right? The thrill can be in the form of like goose pimples, Right? I think all of you must have felt some kind of thrill in your life before. And it comes in the form of goose pimples. So that is called a minor thrill. Now this is one of the factors of jhana, one of the factors of concentration. Alright? That factor is called, in Pali word they call it piti. Piti translated to English means joy. And that thrill that you feel is called joy. Or it can be stronger in the form of an electric current. You feel something like an electric current flows through your body. It can come from the top down or it can come from the bottom up. It can start in any part of your body and it spreads over. It can be like electric current. Or you can feel very light and very nice. Or you can feel you are so full of happiness that you are about to burst with that happiness. So as you go on with your recollection of your dana, you become better in it. In the beginning, you have to think of the pictures. Right? You have to recollect what you did and you remember it in pictures. Later on, you can remember only the happiness about it. That means you are improving. Now you do not need the help of pictures already. You can straight away experience the meditation itself. Because the experiencing of the happiness is the actual experiencing of meditation. What I'm trying to do here is try to share with you the experiences of meditation. But of course, what I'm sharing to you, I have to put it in the form of words. But this is an experience of the mind, an experience of the body. An experience of the mind is quite difficult to put it into words. Because words is something that you hear only. If you can receive my mental experience and I can pass it on to you through the mind directly, that would be wonderful. But I don't have the power, and neither do you have the power to receive it, okay? So we have to make use with trying to understand the experience of the mind through the experience of the five senses. I mean, it is not enough, right? And you'll probably be thinking about it. But you have to practice it to actually experience it. Alright? Now, when do you know that you are actually meditating well? There's a question. Huh? If you can start thinking about that happy event of giving, then you have already fulfilled one of the factors of meditation, of concentration. One of the factors of concentration is called initial thought, initiating the thinking. So you have already started thinking about the happy event. Now if you continue thinking about the happy event, about the dana that you give, then you are following the second factor of meditation or concentration, that is sustained thinking. That means you continue to think about that dana that you give. So you keep on bringing it to mind and you continue thinking about it over a period of time. It can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 1 hour. When you keep on doing this too, the third thing will happen on its own. Alright? That is called the joy that I described to you just now. And then from the joy, you can get what they call it pleasurable feeling or happiness. Now the difference between joy and happiness can be given in the form of a simile. Remember, this is a mental experience. So very hard to put across, but can be put in the form of a simile, a comparison. Joy is a feeling you get when you see your laksa. Laksa is your favorite food. When you see laksa, there's a joy. When you actually eat the laksa, that is happiness. So when you see the laksa, the feeling you have at that time is called joy. If laksa is your favorite food, I don't know why it's your favorite food. I imagine it's laksa, okay? So when I'm saying laksa, if your favorite food happen to be dal, curry, then you think of dal curry, Or if your favorite food happen to be chicharon form, you think about it, right? So seeing that food, your favorite food is, and the feeling you have seeing that food, that is called joy. When actually tasting it, that is called happiness. So the same thing with the practice of meditation. The experience you get, or which we call joy, is compared to when you see your favorite food. That fourth factor of concentration called happiness that you get is when you're actually experiencing the results of the meditation. And the fourth one is your mind becomes one-pointed. One-pointed means your mind is unified. Your mind is only on one thing. It is only on that dana that you give. Initially, you may try to call back 1 dana, 2 danas, 3 danas, a few of them. Then after some time you will settle on those that are your favorite. Now, as you go on meditating, your mind will just zoom in and it goes into just one thought. That is called one-pointed. You just zoom in on one thing. Now, how do you understand what is the meaning of unification of the mind, or the mind is one-pointed? Now, I do not know what are the things that you like. Maybe some of you like to play cards, right? Do you all play cards or mahjong or whatever? Say if you like to play cards, sometimes you are concentrating on your cards until you do not hear what is happening. Somebody talk to you also, you don't know. That is some understanding of the unification of the mind. Or some of you like to read. And when you're reading, even the radio is going on, you don't listen to it anymore. If your wife or somebody calls your name, you don't even hear it. And the person says, what, you are deaf? I call you also, you don't hear. You say, no, I'm reading and I cannot hear you. And that is some understanding of the unification of the mind, or the one-pointedness of the mind. But when you are meditating, that one-pointedness of the mind is more intense than that. Alright? So, now these 5 factors are actually the state of the mind. When the mind has got these 5 factors all together at the same time, then at that time, the mind has gone into a form of concentration. In Buddhism, we call it, the mind has gone into a jhana, a mental state, right? A state of consciousness, a state of well-being of the mind. That state is called jhana. So in Buddhism, we have got 4 jhanas. So when you have 5 factors coming together, you have what you call the first jhana. But when you do recollection, it is not possible to go into what is known as the full absorption. Full absorption is something like the mind has gone, when you get into it, it's as if you have become unconscious, and when you come out of it, you have become conscious again. But you know what is happening. But the experience that you experience inside it, you are not able to recollect until you have mastered it. That is the meaning of absorption. Whereas in recollection, you can only go up to the state of what they call it access into the jhana, or access into absorption. And that is a very beautiful state. That is a state in which you feel very peaceful, as if suddenly everything around you is so quiet. Your mind becomes very quiet. It becomes very light. As if you have been cut off from the whole world. There may be other people meditating together with you, but at that point in time, you have gone into a state in which you are detached from everybody. Everybody is cut away from you. You don't hear them anymore. You don't feel them around you anymore, as if you are in your own world. Suddenly your mind has gone into a different world, so to speak. A world that is very quiet. You're on your own. It's very nice. You feel very light. You may not even feel your body at all. If you feel your body, it's as if the whole body, you don't actually feel your leg or your hand or anything. It's just one whole piece of something there. And it's so comfortable. It's so comfortable, right? So peaceful, so quiet. You may not even feel your body at all. If you feel your body, it's as if the whole body, you don't actually feel your leg or your hand or anything. It's just one whole piece of something there. And it's so comfortable. It's so comfortable, right? So peaceful. So quiet, so nice. Now that is an understanding of what is known by access concentration. And when you're in it, you also feel as if you're very strong, You just feel so strong, right? So access concentration, of course, the access concentration can have even the 4th jhana access concentration. Right? Not only the first jhana, but we won't talk too much about jhanas because it might give further confusion. So when you go about meditating, important thing is do not expect. I have just described to you some of the experiences because I want you to try and understand that it is something wonderful, something nice. But of course, you have already some imagination in your mind.
It is very important that when you meditate, you do not have this imagination of these experiences I tell you. Because the imagination that you have may not be the correct one. You have not experienced it yet, so it may not be the correct one. Those of you who have already experienced it, then you know what I mean. But if you have not experienced it yet, it may not be the correct one. So when you meditate, just have an open mind. And do not expect anything and just meditate. Then, what is the actual experience that you should experience will come out on its own. If you try to expect, then you are putting a boundary to your mind. And you say, these are the things I want to experience. This may not be the actual experience in concentration. But you have already put a boundary in your mind. So your mind is very difficult to go beyond that boundary. And therefore, what you should experience, you will not experience. That's why it's very important that in the practice of meditation, that you should, while you are practicing, you should do it with an open mind. Do not imagine any state. Do not imagine any experience. Because this imagination, this expectation will be a mental block and prevent you from experiencing the actual meditation itself. So you may hear it now, alright, because I want you to sort of an encouragement to you, to meditate. But when you meditate, do it with an open mind. And then you will experience it. Just do it, just recollect, keep on recollecting, and when you feel it, then you know what I mean. Especially the third factor, from the joy, the happiness, and the one-pointedness. The first two is very easy. You just start thinking about it, it's called initial thought. You continue thinking, you have got sustained thinking. So you do have two factors of the jhana. Third, fourth, and fifth will come on its own. But once you have practiced it well, then any time that you want to, you just will it. You just will your mind and you can experience the joy. You just will your mind, you can experience the happiness. You just will your mind, you can get into that state of one-pointedness. You just will it, that's all. So when you are sick, what do? You just will your mind. Your body may be sick, your mind may not be sick. A lot of people, the body is sick, the mind also becomes sick. So they suffer sickness twice. They're emotionally also sick. So they suffer sickness 3 times. So sickness on a person may be very severe or may be very light. If only your body is sick and your mind is not sick, then it is not so heavy, isn't it? And if you recall your meditation, then because your mind and your body are together, that happiness in your mind will go to your body. So at that time, your body also is not sick. When you come out of the meditation, you might even feel the sickness again. So you go back into a meditation. And you try and stay in it as long as possible. So every time that you're in your meditation, the sickness is not present. Right? But you come out of meditation, the sickness is there. So you stay in your meditation again. So the longer the sickness is not there, the sickness will go further and further away. Until such a time, you're in it for so long that when you come out, sickness also is gone. So the mind overcomes the sickness. The presence of the happiness, the presence of the joy, being there for a long period of time, removes the feeling of pain, removes the feeling of suffering. That is how the meditation helps to overcome the sickness. Right? You are hearing it and you think maybe this fellow, talking might be something wonderful, but probably it's not true. But it actually happens. A lot of those people that we meditate together with, they tell me it happens in their life. And I'm telling you because I personally experienced it. It can happen to you. Right? There was one time I nearly had to go for an operation. The doctor said, have to operate. Have to operate. You have to operate on this thing and this. Alright? So I said, never mind, I just postpone it. So I just went into my meditation. I came out, the sickness was still there. So I went in again. Keep on staying there. And I keep on staying there. After some time, went back to the doctor. Hey, cured already. Don't have to go for operation. So it can actually overcome the sickness. And I can tell you a lot of stories of my friends who have actually overcome their sickness with the help of meditation. The one I had is just a minor thing. There's this. Have you read this book called Dharma Therapy? Where people who suffer from cancer and so on and so forth, they become healed. They heal themselves. It's wonderful, isn't it? It is all because of the state of jhana that helps to heal the person. Now, it also happens in America, when a person gets cancer, it doesn't matter how old you are. Sometimes children also get cancer. So in the United States, there are some cases where children are suffering from cancer. So the parent asked the son, what would you like? Because the doctor told the parent, your son has got terminal cancer, going to die 6 months, 1 year. We do not know exactly when, but not more than 1 year. So cannot be cured. So the parents is very sad and all that. So they want to make the last 6 months and a year of the son to be very happy, So they ask the child, what do you want, So the child said, I want just to play all these games that I like to play in the computers, So the parents would buy all the games and give it to the son, So the son the whole day will be playing the computer games, whole day long, So because the parents say, don't need to go to school, what for go to school, it's going to die already. So the son will be playing the computer from day in, day out, from morning to night. And the happiness that the child gets from playing the computer games cures the cancer. Actually happens, If you read about that magazine called Health and things like that, you actually read those cases. So the child gets cured because you're so happy playing the computer. So is that happiness, that state of mind, that state of happiness in the mind cures the cancer. Because when the mind is happy, the body is happy. And the prolonged happiness of the mind and the body together chases away, keeps away that suffering, keeps away the pain. And the longer period the mind and the body is in the happiness, this sickness goes further and further away until the sickness has got no more strength and then it goes off. That's how it happens. Any questions, anybody? The form of meditation we are going through today is called recollection. There are other methods of meditation because if you are, I have to link it to the dana. I promise those people here that I'll give a talk on dana and I will link it to meditation. So the only way you can meditate on dana is through a way of meditation called recollection or remembering of that dana. That's the only way to meditate on dana. No other way. Okay? Of course, there are other forms of meditation. You might have an object, say a color, and then you just look at the color and then you meditate on it. Or some people do it on breath. Some people in Thailand, they just do Buddho and all that. And then they meditate on that. So there are many ways of meditating. Does that answer your question?
Good morning, brother and sister. Just now, Brother Lin had just mentioned about this meditation. Brother Lin has mentioned about in order to start the meditation, we have to think about these happy events that we have come across. Does that mean that there's an attachment to this happy event? Or the other case, just happened that we don't have the happy event, so that what I'm trying to say that if our sad event is more than our happy event, what should we do? Okay, thank you.
Now, the happy event I was referring to specifically is dana. Don't get me wrong. I'm so happy you asked the question. I'm not talking about other happy events. Today's meditation talk is just on dana and meditation on dana. We're not talking about happy events when you go dancing and all that. Alright? We're just talking, I know there are many happy events that you have. Okay? We're just talking about happy event on dana alone. Let me make myself very clear here. So you just recollect on the dana that you did. Because dana is something good. Dana is something wholesome. When you meditate on something wholesome, the mind becomes wholesome and what you call sublime, high, subtle. Right? Then the next one he says, when you recall the event, does that mean there is attachment? Alright. Now here we talk about giving. When you give something without attaching to that thing that you give. Say I give $10 away. Then this person used the $10 to buy food. Now this money that I give away, you're no more attached to that gift that you're given. Right? That's the meaning of giving. That's why I say willingly, happily. So the attachment is not there. Then you say, oh, but you are recollecting what you did. Does that mean you are attached to that thing that you did? Now, when you start recollecting it, there is a certain amount of attachment. And you are right. There is the attachment. But as you keep on doing it, the factors of concentration, the factors of jhana, by itself will bring about the detachment. You cannot get into the one-pointed state until the mind becomes detached. Do you remember you're reading and you read so concentrated on it that your mind is detached from your other senses and you're only on what is in the book. So that's how detachment slowly comes about. Okay? And the detachment for the, what you call the lower, detachment of the senses comes about. Alright? So what type of detachment are we talking here? The detachment we are talking here is detachment from sensual desires, detachment from ill will, detachment from doubt, detachment from distractions and worries. These are the detachments that we talk about. Alright? The final detachment from greed, hatred and delusion does not come about through this form of meditation. It comes about through another form of meditation called mindfulness. Here again, I have to bring you back to the talk. The talk is just on dana and meditation from dana. Okay? What you are telling me is, what if you don't have any happy event? That means to say, if you have never done dana before, I'm sure in our life, we must have given something before. Alright? The question is whether at that time we give it, are we happy or not? If we have given things before, and you have not actually been happy about it, then it's about time you start something new. And next time, when you give, be happy. So you start something new. And then you think about that new thing that you just did. Alright? Forget about your sad events. Sad events will bring about the opposite things of jhana. You will bring about sadness. You will bring about sorrow. You will bring about crying and wailing. You will bring about suffering. You will bring about lamentation. So don't think about those sad events. You get you inside the dumps, you know. You'll be in the pits, as they say. You get into a rut. You have nervous breakdown and things like that. Don't go for such things. So if you have not done dana with happiness, then start doing some dana and have happiness. Then you recall it. If you can sacrifice something and then do the dana, he has got even more strength, more impact on you. You do something that has got a stronger impact on your mind. If you have to sacrifice something that has got a stronger impact, you can remember it better, and then the happiness will come stronger because you feel it, you know, like that. Any questions?
Question one is the duration. Is there any sort of time period, maybe 1 hour, 20 minutes or something? The second question is, I understand you were mentioning you can do it during the party. That means there's no any form of posture. You can sit down, standing up. And the third question is, this meditation through dana, as you say, there are also other forms of meditation. Will all this different form of meditation leads to the same unification or the one-pointed mind? Ultimately, all the meditations leads to the same state of unification. Okay.
What's the first question again? Okay. Right. Is there any period of time? That depends on you. How much time you have. Right? Can be 1 minute, can be 3 minutes, can be 5 minutes. Of course, the longer time you spend on it, you have more time for your mind to come down. Alright? So, you want to ask another question to the first question? Okay. You are sort of jumping the gun here, you know, in the sense that, say, you put yourself 5 minutes and then you meditate, alright? And then you estimate, so unless you are very busy, you actually have to get up 5 minutes time. If you are not busy, you continue, you know, until you don't feel like meditating anymore, then you get up. You are talking about getting into a state. When you have progressed to that stage, then what happens is this: you just will your mind to meditate for 5 minutes, half an hour, exactly half an hour, you will come out. Alright, when you get to that state. If you say you're going to get up at 1 o'clock, when 1 o'clock comes, you'll get up. Your mind can measure it by itself. Very, very funny. Then number two, you said any postures. Not necessary. Alright? Do you have to sit in a lotus position, looking like the statue of a Buddha or something? You don't have to, you know. You can be standing, you can be walking, you can be sitting, any posture. You can be lying down. Right? Posture is not important. But of course, sitting will be good. Right? Because when you get into deeper states, if you're not used to standing, you might go out of position and then collapse. Does that answer the second question? Of course, when you meditate, you try and close your eyes. It will be more effective. Because when you close your eyes, you are cutting away another sense. Alright? Then the third question is about meditation. Whether all meditation leads to one-pointedness of the mind. here we are talking about Buddhist meditation. All the meditations taught by the Buddha do lead to one-pointedness of the mind. Okay? Even if you are doing mindfulness, it also leads to one-pointedness of the mind. But mindfulness, you do not enter into a full absorption, but you have what you call access concentration. We are here, we're just talking about words here, but when you experience it, then you know what I mean. Okay? Does that answer your third question? There's something I forgot to tell you, and that is this. A lot of people think that when you meditate or when you concentrate, you must actually go something like this, you know. Right? That means sort of force, you know. No. Meditation is something very relaxed. Very relaxed. Not only is meditation easy, you must also take it easy when you meditate. Don't force yourself. Huh? The mind, the body and the mind, when a person is concentrated, the mind is very soft, the mind is very pliable. So to start it off, you can sit in a straight position where your body is straight but relaxed. Feel relaxed. Feel every part of the body relaxed but quite straight. So feeling relaxed is one of the important keys in meditation. Make sure your whole body is relaxed and your mind is very relaxed as well. Very calm, very relaxed. Then you begin your meditation. Okay? Actually, I do not know what time I'm supposed to finish. I'm supposed to finish at about 11:15 or so. Around there. Anybody got any more questions? Today we started a bit late. But somebody is supposed to be in charge here, you know. Anyway, it's a long story. Any questions? No more? No more questions? Now, before we part, can I say one or two things just to round up everything? It would be good if you are thinking of doing this recollection of dana. If you are thinking of doing it seriously, it would be good if you try and find somebody who can help to monitor your progress. Okay? So that you don't go out of track. Some people go out of track, you know. They try and recollect their dana, and in the process they recollect other things, you see. And then they forget about the recollection of the dana and continue with the recollection of other things. Then they get lost inside. Okay? So try to get somebody who can monitor progress. Preferably somebody who is experienced. Well, the natural states of the mind, you know, not to say natural states, normally our minds are full of the 5 factors opposite to jhana. Normally our mind is full of distraction, is lazy, right? It is full of doubts, it is full of sensual desires. You think of eating this, eating that, watching television, so on and so forth. Desires of the senses, right? Senses of the eye, the ear, tasting, whatever. And then it could also be easily irritated. Right? You get irritated, you get angry. So the mind is full of these 5 states, easy to get. So you just only mention one of them. What do you call it? What do you call it? Distraction, is it? Was that the word you used? Wandering mind, yes, wandering mind. It's something like distraction. The mind, instead of focusing on the subject, goes away from the subject. So that's called distraction. I don't know how come you never mentioned the other 5. Because at any time you are meditating, any of these 5 can come, not only one of them. Okay? So what you do is, go back. Just go back. When the mind wanders away, that means to say, the sustained thinking is lost. Alright? You initiate the thought, after 1, twice, 3 times, it goes away. So that means the problem you have here is in sustaining the thought for a longer period of time. So practice makes perfect. Alright? There's no easy way out. The easy way is to practice. So that means you bring your mind back and do it again. Bring your mind back and do it again. Bringing your mind back doesn't mean to say you force your mind to come back. That's not the way to do it. You just think about it again, that's all. And if you are relaxed, then it's easier. If you are physically relaxed and let your mind calm down before you start, it's easy to do it. When you try and force your mind, then it's hard to do it. A stiff mind is not a mind that can work. When you force your mind, it will become dull. You try and think, nothing comes. Try and think about the dana, no, the thought will not come. The mind becomes stiff, so it refuses to work, becomes dull. You force it some more, you fall asleep. The mind will just fall asleep. Don't want to work anymore, you just fall asleep. Then you start experiencing the state of your mind, quite nice actually, very interesting. Or you might just run wild. You force me too much, I run wild. So you just run wild. The mind will run wild. Your mind is very funny. It's a very funny creature, the mind. Very funny creature. It doesn't want to be controlled, Any more questions? No more questions? Okay, no more questions. Thank you very much for your time here. And I hope what I've shared with you is something that you can benefit you and benefit all the people around you. Thank you very much. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Brother Peter Lim. Actually, we have all of you have sat here and listened to his talk. And actually, this is an achievement on your part because you have made an effort to come on Sunday morning to listen to a talk which is very beneficial to you. And of course, we could have easily say we could have gone to the Lake Gardens or gone to a nearest tennis club and do whatever we not like. But instead, all of you chose to come here. So that is actually a very good effort. And I hope that with this, you have cultivated good manners and can assist you in cultivating your mind in meditation. So I hope that all of you have gained something from here and perhaps make a start for your meditation thing. Okay, so after this, at about 12 p.m., we are having the choir singing, a choir practice actually, for the Vesak launching ceremony in Stadium Negara on the 6th of May, which is Saturday. It should start say about 7:30 p.m. at night. Then there will be a big gathering of various Buddhist organizations, and there will be various choir groups from various Buddhist organizations. So we are having a practice for that, starting say about 12 p.m. And I hope a lot of you will join us. Another thing is that we are also organizing the Vesak Children's Party. I'm sure all of you know about it because there was an earlier announcement. It's actually to bring happiness to the children and to remind that Vesak Day is actually a day for reflection and also a day of happiness. So let us share the happiness of Vesak Day. So with this, I hope that we can see you again the following Sunday for the next talk. Thank you very much of you.